What's going on, everybody? Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are pumped because the Dallas Cowboys had their rookie minicamp over the weekend, the first bit of professional football action for the newest players of America's team. Obviously, as we all well know, the NFL draft a couple of weeks ago. And now that all of the pomp and circumstance, all of the fun, all of the fanfare is kind of in the rearview mirror, we're now starting to think about who these players are going to be for the Dallas Cowboys. How are they going to fit in? What are their skills going to do to translate to help this team on Sundays, on Mondays, on Thursdays, sometimes on Saturdays? We found out last season that can even happen on a Wednesday. But ultimately, we want to start to figure out who these players are going to be within the Cowboys. A lot of these players, obviously, defensive draft picks for the Dallas Cowboys within Dan Quinn's defense. We've been putting out a lot of film reviews so far here on the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel, so make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any of our wonderful productions that we have. We now have film reviews up on Jabril, on Kelvin, obviously on Micah Parsons. We have more on the way, so look forward to that. But today, we want to talk about the impact, or rather, who can make an impact early on. And obviously, before we get there, we have to show you some highlights. The Dallas Cowboys were generous enough to tweet out a couple of different things over the course of the weekend. This video, just a short little highlight clip that the Dallas Cowboys tweeted out, but early on, you can see an interception from one of their two new linebackers. An interception there for Jabril wearing number 48. If you follow him on Twitter, it seems like he really is not a fan of that and he wants to change it as soon as possible. I'm big on jersey numbers. We talked about that here in a video a couple of weeks back. I kind of like it. I'm not a big 40s on a linebacker guy, but I kind of like it if you're a fast, rangy linebacker like Jabril is, but we'll see what he ultimately switches to because it does feel like that shoe is going to drop. But let's talk about the shoe that's on the other foot, the other linebacker that the Cowboys drafted, obviously Micah Parsons. The Cowboys spent their first round pick on Micah, not 10 overall, but traded back, obviously, as we all well know, with the Philadelphia Eagles, took him at number 12, and now he is seemingly going to be manning the middle of the defense. And I don't think there's any doubt. I don't think there's any way to kind of get around this. If you're talking about which Cowboys rookie is going to make the biggest impact early on, it is certainly Micah Parsons. And we look at the state of the Dallas Cowboys linebacker room as a whole. They did not pick up the fifth-year option on Leighton Vander Esch. Jaylon Smith has not played well and seemingly is falling out of favor with the Cowboys camp. You look at it, and Micah Parsons has all of the tools that really separate him specifically within this particular team. He's rangy, he's fast, he's obviously fast side to side, which are tools that neither Leighton Vander Esch or Jaylon Smith have at this point in their careers. In fact, athletically, the linebacker who is probably Micah's biggest competition is Jabril. But so if you're looking at who is going to make the biggest impact early on, it has to be Micah Parsons. And I know that the state of the linebacker position is a little bit more different, obviously, than we thought it was going to be before this whole draft period started. But, I mean, let's take a look at the state of the linebackers for the Dallas Cowboys. Again, this is every linebacker on the Cowboys as of now. Francis Bernard, friend of the show, by the way, he told us about how he wants to be a contributor on special teams. That's not on defense. But talking about defensive players, Jabril, as noted, Luke Gifford, a great story, but not somebody who's going to be challenging for snaps. Anthony Hines III, Azur Kamara, Keanu Neal, a new linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. We know Dan Quinn confirmed right after the draft that he is going to be playing linebacker for the team, not safety. You've obviously got Micah Parsons now, and then Jaylon Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. And so I'll challenge you, wherever you are, wherever you're watching this, if you're watching it on your computer, on your tablet, on your gaming console, wherever you are, make sure you hit subscribe, but just shout it out loud. Just shout it. Who sang that song? Was it AC/DC? Right? Shout it, shout it, shout it out. I'm pretty sure it was AC/DC. Don't get upset with me. But how many are better than Micah Parsons right now, today? If I told you you're starting an NFL team yourself, you can have any of these linebackers for your team. How many are you taking ahead of Micah Parsons? Because the answer is none. The answer really, truly is none. Yes, there is some NFL experience that Leighton Vander Esch and Jaylon Smith have, but that really kind of goes out the window early on. And so that's why I think when you're talking about rookies, specifically drafted rookies that can make an impact for the Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons is at the very top of the list. He's talked about how the Cowboys want to play him at the Mike linebacker position. We're obviously going to see him in the middle of the defense making calls. That's going to be really great. Somebody who can do it with authority, because the problem has been, and I think you would agree with this, the person, outside of Leighton Vander Esch when he was, balling just out of control in 2018, and Sean Lee, at different points in his career. But the person who has been executing the defensive calls for the Cowboys, it's been Jaylon Smith a lot of times, has not really backed up the calls in terms of doing it with their own game, right? Like, it's a little bit difficult to kind of see somebody execute things. And that's why I think we all have such a level of comfortability in the Cowboys offense, because Dak Prescott is that dude. He backs up his talking with his walking, and Micah Parsons has the athleticism to be able to do that. Certainly he's raw in the NFL, and that will come with time, but that really is a huge factor when you consider the type of impact they're going to make. And again, he's already made an impact because, again, the Cowboys did not pick up the fifth-year option for Leighton Vander Esch. And so he has gone a long way without ever playing a snap. I know they've obviously participated in rookie minicamp, and every, report out of the Star in Frisco is that Micah Parsons looked great. But, I mean, he got the Cowboys to make a decision on two players in Jaylon Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. I know they haven't made a decision on Jaylon in terms of transactionally, but he got them to do something about two players that they have been catering to now for over 2 years. So Micah Parsons has already made that impact, and right behind him, obviously, is going to be Jabril Cox. And he is somebody that can operate in a very different way from Micah Parsons. There's going to be a lot of responsibility placed on Micah's shoulders, especially if he is going to come in lieu of Vander Esch, in lieu of Jaylon Smith, because you look at it, I think that Micah takes Jaylon Smith off the field. And I think that Jabril comes in and obviously alleviates Leighton Vander Esch's duties because Micah Parsons isn't going anywhere. So Jabril Cox, I think that if you're measuring the overall impact, and we can define impact in a number of different ways, but if we're talking about the quality of impact, because I want to talk about quantity in a second, but the quality of impact, it certainly makes sense that Micah Parsons and Jabril Cox are going to go the longest way their rookie season with the Cowboys. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that the linebacker room is so depleted right now in terms of legitimate talent. We'll put the state of the linebacker group up here again. There are names here, right? Like, when I say it's depleted, you look at this and you say, RJ, it's not depleted. They have 4 NFL caliber linebackers, which is technically true now, in Micah Parsons, Jabril Cox, Jaylon Smith, and Leighton Vander Esch. But do they really have 4 quality NFL players? They've been going at this for a long time now with some sub-quality players, and that's why we've gotten sub-quality production from them. And so overall, again, I think the quality of impact will be most felt from Jaylon Smith, from Micah Parsons and Jabril Cox, because these are two players. When you look at Micah Parsons, he's obviously got the athleticism to blitz. We've heard from him already talking about how, in speaking with the defensive coaches on the Cowboys, that they're going to find a way to get him after the quarterback on third down. That helps out the whole group. That helps out your DeMarcus Lawrences. That helps out whether it's your Neville Gallimore, whether you're Quinton Bohanna, whatever the case may be along the interior. That helps out everybody. A rising tide lifts all boats. That's what Micah Parsons is in terms of his athleticism. But beyond that, where Jabril Cox's impact is going to be felt is in generating turnovers. And I think that that's something that we're really, really, really going to love from him early on. It feels like yesterday, but need I remind you that in the early part of the 2020 season, I wrote about this at the time for bloggingtheboys.com. We talked about it here on the YouTube channel. Maybe you weren't here then. Where were you? We were waiting for you back then. But in the first 4 games of the season, the Dallas Cowboys began a possession. I'm talking about the starting point when they were on offense across the 50-yard line like twice. And the first time was a Chidobe Awuzie interception in week 1 against the Los Angeles Rams, which was nice. The other time was the watermelon kick against the Atlanta Falcons. And we all believe in the state of this Cowboys offense. We all believe that they can put up a lot of points. We all believe that they can carry their end of the bargain. But if you're asking even the best offense in the NFL to go 75, 77, 81, 73, even 68 yards every other possession, I mean, it's impossible. It's too difficult, again, even for the Kansas City Chiefs or whoever you define to be the best offense in the NFL right now. And so if Jabril Cox can help the Cowboys with his side-to-side athleticism, with his ability to cover, the best coverage linebacker in the draft, as we've discussed a number of different times, if he can help force turnovers, and turnovers aren't necessarily even just turnovers, but if he can be in the way, if he can disrupt the passing game, because that is what this Cowboys defense has needed for a long time. Yes, we want to see pressure on the quarterback. Yes, we want to see sacks. Yes, we want to be sack strip fumbles. We want to see all of that. But if Jabril Cox can help out in the pass game, specifically in the pass defense, obviously, he's not going to be out there running routes and catching balls. that is maybe honestly the single biggest impact that any Cowboys rookie can make so far that we have seen this season. And I know this season is young, but that is maybe the single biggest quality I'm most excited to watch when it comes to these specific players. But that is the state of the linebackers. There are obviously other players who we anticipate to make extremely large impacts in their rookie season with the Dallas Cowboys. The next one, of course, he has a name that a lot of people call him. We're going to call him Kelvin Joseph. Kelvin Joseph, a great pick for the Cowboys. And we've had a lot of time to digest, obviously, what the Cowboys did in the NFL draft. But coming back in the second round after their adjustment in round one to get Micah Parsons, to land Kelvin Joseph wearing the best number that a cornerback can wear. Look, I mean, just looks incredible in this number 24. How can you not be pumped about Kelvin Joseph wearing number 24? And so far has said all of the right things in terms of appearances with the media, has answered questions about how he's going to pursue his music career and things like that. And he's talking about focusing and working on football. But I really believe that when you look at the potential for players that are drafted by the Cowboys, their rookie class, I really think that Kelvin Joseph has the path of least resistance towards making an impact. And the whole theme of our conversation here today is the impact that this class will make. And the top of the guys at the class are the guys at the top of the class. Talking is hard sometimes, but I think that Kelvin has the path of least resistance in that while I don't think any of us believe Jalen Smith or Leighton Vander Esch are posing severe threats to Micah Parsons or Jabril Cox's playing time, they are at the very least dudes in the way, right? Like they exist. Versus the fact that Kelvin Joseph is really entering a position group with the Dallas Cowboys that doesn't have a lot to offer. I mean, maybe you could make the argument that their best cornerback left in free agency, and Chidobe Awuzie, I'm not at all trying to slight Trayvon Diggs, but Chido was their most veteran quarterback of legitimate quality. Yes, Jordan Lewis is very good. Anthony Brown is technically an older player than Chido, but is not the quality player that Chido is, and we're obviously wishing Chido the best in Cincinnati. But let's take a look at this, because Anthony Brown, Deontay Burden, Maurice Kennedy, Trayvon Diggs, who we believe in, CJ Goodwin, more of a special team star, obviously, Kelvin Joseph now, Jordan Lewis, Reggie Robinson the second, and we'll see. The Cowboys can't make up their minds with him. Is he a safety? Is he a corner? What's going to happen there? And Nahshon Wright, obviously, that is, and we're going to talk about Nahshon in a second, by the way, but who is standing in Kelvin Joseph's way? I mean, seriously, who is standing in his way when it comes to starting time, when it comes to legitimate time, when it comes to real time? I mean, for real, like Trayvon Diggs and Trayvon, fine. You want to put Trayvon ahead of, Kelvin Joseph? I'm not going to argue with that. Trayvon was a baller last year, had 3 interceptions. I mean, and granted, they were all against the Philadelphia Eagles, but still somebody who generated turnovers for the Dallas Cowboys, something that we discussed being incredibly important. Anthony Brown, not going to stand in Kelvin Joseph's way. Jordan Lewis, obviously, has his role with the Cowboys, but not going to stand in Kelvin Joseph's way. The Cowboys spent a second-round pick on Kelvin Joseph because they believe in him. You're looking at the top 2 guys at the top of this list, Kelvin Joseph and Trayvon Diggs. That's your starting cornerback tandem at some point in the season. I don't think the Cowboys roll out week 1 because they suffered so many injuries and had so many things go on last season that Trayvon Diggs was kind of thrown into the fire. And that was a good thing because we got to see Trayvon Diggs play a lot more. And obviously, as the season got, broken for the Cowboys, it was really valuable time and a lot of valuable opportunities for Trayvon learning in the NFL, because he's only been playing corner still now for just a couple of years, obviously transitioning from a wide receiver at Alabama. But Kelvin Joseph, while he won't have that obvious path in that it won't be forced upon him, I think it will be obvious soon enough. I think it will actually be obvious in training camp that he is much better than Anthony Brown, that he is much better than Jordan Lewis. And granted, there are things in the NFL that get thrown at you, literally, if you're a cornerback here, that are difficult to anticipate and difficult to process and difficult to ultimately, wrap your head around as a young player. And Kelvin Joseph will have the natural and normal and acceptable and understandable rookie struggles. But soon enough, I mean, the Cowboys bye is in week 7. I don't know how we get to a point post-Cowboys bye where Kelvin Joseph is not commanding a lion's share of snaps opposite of Trayvon Diggs. And so, I mean, you've got 2 second-round picks over the course of the last 2 years starting at cornerback for you, as opposed to, I know Jordan Lewis was a 3rd-round pick. That was 4 years ago. Anthony Brown was a 6th-round pick 5 years ago. I mean, your resources have been spent on Kelvin Joseph and spent on Trayvon Diggs. And so that's why, again, I mean, I think that the impact from Micah Parsons and from Jabril Cox is going to happen naturally because their talent is so great. And I think that obviously Micah Parsons is the most talented player in the draft class with regards to their respective positions. Kelvin Joseph has an enormous amount of talent. It's just harder to demonstrate that at the cornerback position. And so while I think that it will be obvious in training camp that he is so much better than these players, the Cowboys, that's such a hard thing to trust. It's such a hard thing, you know, even if you walk away, even if the Cowboys had drafted J.C. Horn or Patrick Surtain, it's such a hard thing to trust a rookie corner from day one. I mean, generally the most elite dudes, Jalen Ramsey, even everybody goes through their kind of normal process of establishing themselves in the NFL. And that timeline will exist for Kelvin Joseph, just like it has everybody that's come before him. But ultimately, I think he will be the starter, like in name. Maybe Micah Parsons beats him because he's the 1st-round pick. The Cowboys have done a lot for him. Obviously made a big deal about getting him number 11 and all that jazz. But of all the non-Micah Parsons picks, I mean, I think Jabril Cox will wind up a starter before the season is over. But I think Kelvin Joseph gets there faster just because the path is much friendlier for him because the quality of talent around him is much weaker. I mean, when we entered the draft, when we talked about team needs for the Cowboys, you know, so many weeks ago over the course of the last few months, the top positional need was cornerback, was it not? And linebacker was a need. And that's why the Cowboys drafted both Micah Parsons and Jabril Cox, and obviously have accepted that they made some mistakes with other players that they drafted like Jalen and Leighton. But cornerback was the top need. And so that in and of itself is enough evidence to prove that Kelvin has the path of least resistance towards getting on the field for the Dallas Cowboys, which again, if he's not starting after the bye, the Cowboys visit the Minnesota Vikings in week 8. And so if he's not starting by then, I think that, you know, something's gone a little bit wrong, and something, I don't think, maybe something's gone a little bit wrong is a heavy way to put it, but something has not gone the way we are anticipating it to go. This would be very normal. This would be very natural, and it would make a lot of sense specifically or especially because Kelvin has a lot of talent, which is what a lot of Cowboys players in the secondary currently don't. But let's talk about other secondary players. Let's talk about, we've obviously spoken about the cornerback position. Let's talk about safety. What about our friend Israel Mukuamu? We interviewed him. We spoke to him just one day after the Dallas Cowboys drafted him. You can go back. You can watch that interview in our channel, in our feed. It was really great. He was awesome. But he is a safety now. Technically, at the time, he was a cornerback for the Cowboys, and people thought he was going to be. We kind of had an inkling when we did our live draft show that he was going to be a safety, and the Cowboys have since announced, rather informally, but still, that he is a safety prospect for them. He obviously has a lot of athleticism. He obviously is somebody who, we believe could potentially be a great safety. Now, I don't want to, distract from our hope for Israel, but if you're the Cowboys, you have to eventually devote and invest some legitimate resources in the safety position. But still, nonetheless, Israel is somebody who is a bit of a wild card. Now, not necessarily of the same cut as the other rookies, because we know that Micah Parsons and Jabril Cox and Kelvin Joseph are going to get their opportunities. But kind of like Kelvin Joseph, the path for Israel really isn't that intimidating. If you take a look at the state of the Cowboys roster at the safety position, DeMonte KZ, obviously somebody who is seemingly going to make an impact early on in his Cowboys career. You've got Jaron Kearse, who they brought in free agency, Israel as well, Stephen Parker, Darian Thompson, who is a special teams ace. And, we've said that several times, by the way, in talking about linebackers and corners and obviously safety. You look at Francis Bernard, you look at CJ Goodwin, you look at Darian Thompson, although Darian has gotten his chances defensively for the Cowboys, but it is nice that the Cowboys have these devoted special teams players. That's a whole different subject, but John Fossil really has done a lot to help the Cowboys focus on an important aspect of the game. But I digress. Donovan Wilson may be the name that people are most attached to when it comes to the safety position in 2021. And so, yeah, tell me that Israel can't see legitimate time. I know he's a rookie, but tell me that Israel Mukuamu can't get on the field early on for the Cowboys. DeMonte KZ is on a one-year deal for the Cowboys, so maybe it's not a right now, right away thing for Israel, but he really can factor into the Cowboys' plans soon enough. Donovan Wilson, obviously, I think I'll ask you that question. I asked you a little while ago to answer out loud, but I'll ask you this again. Shout out loud. Wherever you just shout again, like scream, like the top of your lungs. Which player in this group do you feel the best about? Like if you had to put a 100 jelly beans on one of these players and their prospects within the Cowboys defense, it's Donovan Wilson, right? And then if you went, who's number 2 on that list? It's Devontae Casey, right? And then if you went number 3, is it Israel? I mean, maybe at that point you're kind of hoping and you're placing jelly beans in terms of something you want to see happen. But I think that's fair. I really do. And so Israel Mukuamu, definitely a wild card, somebody who could pay off for the Cowboys. But at that point in the draft, that's what you want to see. And, if you factor anything that in terms of off the field stuff that goes into who makes players, who they end up being in the NFL, again, I seriously encourage you, go watch our interview with Israel, because that dude has a lot of heart, has a lot of will, has a lot of drive, and is seriously going to give this whole thing his shot, which is very exciting to see. But Israel Mukuamu, definitely a wild card option for the Cowboys. We have one more wild card option to get to, but before that, we want to talk about somebody else who could seemingly definitely make a large impact their rookie season, and that is, of course, Quinton Bohanna. Quinton Bohanna has an opportunity to make an impact, again, because of the position he plays. The Cowboys aren't necessarily rich at defensive tackle. The Cowboys need some options. Quinton offers a level of athleticism, certainly a level of physical size that the Cowboys currently don't have, and that's very exciting. It's very exciting. We haven't really talked about Dan Quinn, to think about what Dan Quinn's version of Quinton Bohanna is going to look like. We know that Dan Quinn has had success at molding defensive tackles before, certainly in Atlanta, and maybe Quinton Bohanna is the first step in the right direction for the Cowboys in that capacity. Again, taking a look at the defensive tackles on the team, Neville Gallimore, 3rd-round pick last year. Tristan Hill, a 2nd-round pick 2 years ago, but obviously coming off of the torn ACL, suffered in the same game as the Cowboys lost Dak Prescott in. And Osa Odigizua, who I think is along the same lines here, somebody who has a chance to make a large impact. And maybe we'll call this kind of the Osa and Quinton level of impact, because now the Cowboys have bodies, and we saw them obviously move on from Antoine Woods. And the reason for that is the addition of Osa Odigizua, is the addition of Quinton Bohanna, is Tristan Hill coming off the torn ACL. But, Tristan, for all his faults in 2019, showed a lot of promise early on in 2020, is having Neville Gallimore, the 3rd-round pick. The Cowboys now have a youth movement, and while they're still not investing top resources, I mean, you look at it, Quinton Bohanna, not a top draft pick for the Cowboys in terms of, what's on the surface. Osa Odigizua is, though. Tristan Hill is. Neville Gallimore is. I mean, the Cowboys now are throwing 2nd and 3rd-round picks at the defensive tackle position. It would be nice if they would do that at the safety spot, but we all know that is not the Cowboys' way. Quinton Bohanna, definitely that kind of just ideal trash can run stuffing defensive tackle that we've really wanted to see. He is a step in that direction. And so that is what is the most exciting. I don't want to take away from Osa Odigizua, but Quinton Bohanna offers that particular contribution, that particular thing that is a very specific quality that the Cowboys defense has not had in some time. And so to see them acknowledge that is huge in and of itself. And kind of like Micah Parsons has already made a huge impact, but I think that Quinton Bohanna has an opportunity to be I don't want to belittle it to a specialty role or a gadget role or anything like that, but Quinton Bohanna has a chance to legitimately and seriously and significantly contribute to the Cowboys this season, as does Osa Odigizua. Ultimately, the point here is that the defense seemingly is in some good hands, or rather that we're really excited about the state of the Cowboys defense moving forward. And so in that sense, the last one to discuss here, and this is the player that developed or generated the most consternation when it comes to the NFL draft, Nahshon Wright. Nahshon Wright, certainly when we did our live show, when the Cowboys drafted him, I think caused a lot of hesitation. I think a lot of people were curious as to what this was, but Nahshon Wright, all of the reports out of the Cowboys rookie minicamp that they held last week were very positive, were very glowing of him. And obviously he fits the physical mold that Dan Quinn prefers in his cornerbacks. We talked about Kelvin Joseph. His athleticism is off the charts, but Nahshon Wright is, again, the physical archetype. He kind of walked back his Richard Sherman comments, in case you missed it, after the draft, after he was drafted rather by the Cowboys. Nahshon said that he really thinks he can be the next Richard Sherman for the Cowboys. Obviously, the Dan Quinn connection is there. A lot of people thought that, that was kind of dreaming a bit too much. And he really just said, look, that's how confident I am in myself. And again, the fact that reports are very solid early on, it's just rookie minicamp, so not necessarily something to get super freaked out about right now. But it is still exciting because this is the pick that I think we're all rooting to be wrong about, right? Like if Nahshon is a baller, I mean, not even this year, but it's any point in the future, we're going to look back and call all of ourselves idiots for not being pumped about this draft in 2021. And we're going to say Dan Quinn knew, the Cowboys knew, it was awesome, good for Nahshon, it worked out, blah, blah, blah. And I hope that that's the case. And I know that you hope that that's the case. But he is a wild card. I mean, he truly is. And I think that this is very different than we talked about Chidobe Awuzie and Jordan Lewis when we spoke about Kelvin Joseph. When the Cowboys drafted them in 2017, they had just seen their entire secondary leave in free agency. Literally the entire starting Cowboys secondary from 2016 left the offseason after. Morris Claiborne went to the New York Jets. Brandon Carr went to the Baltimore Ravens. J.J. Wilcox went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before he was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Barry Church went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, had the very infamous comment about how the Cowboys weren't as talented as the Jaguars. Everybody thought he was crazy. And then the Jaguars lost the AFC Championship game while the Cowboys missed the playoffs. But a whole different story in and of itself again. And so the Cowboys didn't see a whole lot of loss in free agency in the secondary position. In terms of players that were valuable, yes, Chidobe Awuzie left, but the Cowboys brought in Kelvin Joseph, and now they have Nahshon Wright. So you look at the future of this group, and obviously Trayvon Diggs factors into there, but Nahshon obviously offers a really nice potential, and that's what it is right now, right? Like, I don't want to call it house money, but if his physical assets are really that important to Dan Quinn, and if Dan, like, that's the other thing we have to consider here. Dan Quinn was willing to go out on such a limb for Nahshon Wright that it was met with all the what it was met with after the draft. That is worth mentioning because clearly Dan Quinn believes in him. And if Dan Quinn believes in him enough, and we talked again about the depth at the cornerback position. I don't even really want to call it depth as much as just the names on the cornerback position. But that means that Dan Quinn clearly believes that Nahshon Wright is somebody valuable, which if the Cowboys are in a pickle and have to play somebody, it makes sense that somebody who Dan Quinn really likes would get the first opportunities, does it not? So that's an important thing to mention here. But I think he truly is the largest wild card of the bunch because if he plays well, we all, at this point, it's been enough time that we've digested. And again, we've watched some of these film reviews that you can access on our Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. The one on Kelvin Joseph is great, and the one on Micah, they're all great. But we have now, I don't want to say accepted because we weren't upset, but we've now obviously understood that the Cowboys came away with two really solid defenders in their first two picks, obviously Micah Parsons and Kelvin Joseph. And obviously Nahshon Wright wasn't the third player that they selected, but he was a third-round pick. And so a lot of people are really kind of harping on that. But if he develops, I mean, we already talked about Osa Digizua, but if he develops, the Cowboys could have seemingly gotten two star cornerbacks, again, in our wildest of dreams here. Wildest Dreams, that's a Taylor Swift song, right? I think it's it's Wildest Dreams. That's a great song, by the way. If you haven't heard it, super chill vibe, go listen to it. But that's a really nice thing to consider. And that's, again, there's a lot of hope there. There's a lot of crossing fingers. There's a lot of wishing upon a star. No pun intended. But, I mean, that hope exists. And the fact that he looks great so far in his, first taste of NFL action bodes well for him. And I think that we're all really excited about the prospect of Nahshon Wright, especially because he offers the opportunity for all of us to have some crow, or not to have some crow on our face, have some egg on our face, eat some crow, eat some humble pie, whatever phrase, whatever thing you want to put on it. But very excited to consider that the Cowboys may have some really solid defenders that they picked up all over the draft. And, we talked about different names because the Cowboys have a number of, defensive players that they added. I mean, they had 11 draft picks and only spent 2 of them on the offensive side of the ball. There's a lot of defensive players who are going to be here the Cowboys didn't spend all these picks to just have all these guys sit on the sideline. We're going to see a lot of Micah Parsons. We're going to see a lot of Jabril Cox. We're going to see a lot, obviously, of Kelvin Joseph. We could see a lot of Osa Digizua and Quinton Bohanna. We could see a lot of Nahshon Wright. There's a lot to, consider here, which means that there's a lot that's changing. We've already seen that, right? Leighton Vander Esch's 5th-year option not picked up. Antoine Woods obviously moved on from by the Cowboys. Jalen Smith, again, seemingly falling out of favor. We'll see what happens at the cornerback position. That's one place where Kelvin and Nahshon's impact hasn't really been felt. The Cowboys, and they really haven't needed to, but they haven't made any adjustments to that specific position group, which is why it will be very interesting to see how they devote certain snaps, how they obviously prioritize players at training camp as things continue to unfold all throughout the offseason. And as they do, as things happen over the offseason, I can promise you, we're going to have you covered here at Blog on the Boys. Here on our YouTube channel, we get together a couple of times a week. Sometimes we have some live streams. Sometimes we sit down with our friends across the Dallas Cowboys universe to talk about what's going on because we know that you need to stay updated. And it is our job to keep you updated on all things America's team, which is what we do 24/7, 365. Make sure you check out blogontheboys.com. We have a podcast network that we have a show that comes out every single day. That's right. Every single day you get a new Dallas Cowboys show, different people, different hosts, giving you different guests, giving you different perspectives. We are accessible on Apple devices, Spotify. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts if you can. leave a rating, write a review. That really goes a long way at helping us out. We're very excited about the things we're doing here in our YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe right here. We have some big plans for the season. We have big plans for the offseason. We have big plans for June, big plans for July, big plans for training camp. We're really excited about what we're doing here. We appreciate all of you who have chosen to join us for the ride. So, yeah, that about does it for this conversation, talking about impact rookies, wild card rookies. There's a lot of rookies. There's a lot of rookies to be excited about. Hopefully a lot of players who are going to turn this Cowboys defense into something respectable. But, yeah, so like I said, that about does it. And do me a favor and have the absolute best day of all time. You know why? Because you deserve it. We'll see you next time.